Hello, I'm Esther Githu. It's Monday, May 22nd. This is Africa 54.
Sudan's warring factions say this time they will abide by a ceasefire to begin Monday evening. Women who fled conflict in Goma struggle in IDP camps will learn about one woman's ordeal. And U.S. debt ceiling talks are continuing Monday in Washington as the default deadline inches closer. All that and much more coming up on today's Africa 54.
Sudan's army conducted airstrikes in Khartoum on Monday, seeking to win ground against its paramilitary rivals only hours before a week-long ceasefire aimed at allowing delivery of aid is due to begin. The army also carried out airstrikes into the evening on Sunday, targeting vehicles from mobile units of the paramilitary rapid support forces that have been operating across residential areas in the capital. The warring faction signed a deal late Saturday agreeing on a 7-day ceasefire. The halt in fighting is set to begin at 9:45 p.m. local Khartoum time on Monday, according to a joint statement issued by the United States and Saudi Arabia, who are sponsoring the talks. Numerous previous ceasefire agreements were violated. However, this agreement is expected to be enforced by a U.S., Saudi, and international supported monitoring mechanism. The agreement also calls for distributing humanitarian assistance, restoring essential services, and withdrawing forces from hospitals and essential public facilities. The United Nations Security Council on Monday held a meeting on Sudan with special representatives of the Secretary General for Sudan and the head of the UN Integrated Transitional Assistance Mission in Sudan, Volker Perthes, in attendance. For more on the meeting, I'm joined live from UN headquarters in New York by VOA UN correspondent Margaret Bashir. Hello, Margaret.
Hi, Esther. That meeting just wrapped up here a few minutes ago.
And what did Volker Perthes say?
Well, he said that despite many promises by the parties, the conflict has shown no sign of stopping. Let's hope things are better when this new ceasefire goes into effect in a few hours. It goes into effect at 9:45 p.m. local time across Sudan. This one, as you mentioned, was negotiated by the United States and Saudi Arabia in Jeddah on Saturday. And part of it is a monitoring mechanism to make sure that the ceasefire is implemented. And the envoy of Sudan told the council that that would include 3 persons from Saudi Arabia, 3 from the United States, and then 3 each from the parties, the RSF and the Sudan Armed Forces. And if there's problems with the ceasefire, then, for instance, if aid workers cannot get through an area or if they're threatened or something, they would report it to this monitoring mechanism. And you see those in ceasefires around the world. They're very important. So perhaps this time there'll be a better chance of it lasting. And it's supposed to be for an initial 7 days, and then the parties can renew it. The Sudanese ambassador did mention that the government would guarantee the protection of aid workers. That's been something very important because aid hasn't been getting out because of the insecurity. So, so hopefully this ceasefire now will take off in a few hours.
So, Margaret, what can you tell us about phone calls made during that meeting from the African Union and IGAD?
Well, I wouldn't call them phone calls. Exactly. The AU and IGAD joined the meeting by a video conference. That's more accurate. And the head of the African Union Commissioner for Political Affairs, Bankole Adoye, he said that the AU is working relentlessly to find an end to this conflict, and they do have a de-escalation plan. And the African Union Peace and Security Council is expected to meet later this week to endorse that plan. And let's hope perhaps that if the ceasefire holds, that will give them the political space they need in the next week to initiate some sort of progress on the ground. And also the head of EGAD, the executive secretary of EGAD, participated, and he said really what's needed is a coordinated approach. And we heard that from everyone, from council members, from Mr. Perthis, from everyone. There really needs to be a coordinated approach to this because there are many players, the African Union, EGAD, Saudi Arabia, the United States, the Arab League wants a role in this. So everybody needs to kind of coordinate it to make it a success. That was the message.
Margaret, what's the council's take on the ceasefire? Are they hopeful it's going to take ground this time?
Well, I don't know that anybody expressed whether they're hopeful or not, but certainly it was widely welcomed among council members, and they understand that there's a great need for it. There's 250,000 people who have left Sudan. There are more than 1 million who are internally displaced. Hundreds of people have been killed. Thousands have been injured. Power is shutting down, water, food, people need supplies and humanitarians need to be able to reach them in safety. So hopefully this will give the space to do that, and hopefully there will be start to have some sort of stabilization of the situation on the ground. The Sudanese envoy said some airlines are flying again into Port Sudan and into another airport he mentioned. He also said that there is calm in some areas, but we'll have to see what really happens over the next week if this holds or not.
Margaret, thank you very much.
But there's a big call, of course, Esther, for a return to civilian rule.
Thank you, Margaret. VOA UN correspondent Margaret Bashir reporting live for us from UN headquarters in New York. Life in an IDP camp in Goma was never easy for the women who had to flee their homes due to conflict. In Kanyaruchinya camp, one resident shares her ordeal as she struggles to survive. VOA's Paul Ndiho has more.
In Kanyaruchinya IDP camp, about 10 kilometers from Goma in North Kivu province, eastern DRC, Beatrice Wagambi, mother of 6, got shot while she was running away from her home in Nyesisi in May 2022, after the M23 rebels attacked her village. While hiding in the forest, she was shot by stray bullets that shattered her legs. One of her kids got shot and died on the spot. Today, she's struggling to survive.
It was during the night when the rebels arrived, and we hid in the forest. I had my baby, and I had bullets flying around. They killed my child. I was hitting my legs.
Beatrice says she's lucky to be alive, and thanks to the neighbors who came to her rescue.
I had a phone and called for help, and my neighbors came and carried me. But at that point, my baby had died, my dead baby. So they took me to a local clinic, but could not operate on me. So they took me to another hospital in Bukavu.
Despite the adversity, she has found ways to survive and thrive. Today, she's expecting another baby. It's not been easy.
When I stand for a long time, I feel like my back is breaking down because I still have bullets stacked in my leg. So when I stand for a long time, I feel the shock from my legs to right above my waist, so my body is not fine.
Zimbabwe's central bank on May 8th launched a gold-backed digital currency it hopes will reduce the demand for US dollars and the devaluation of the Zimbabwe dollar. But analysts say the government-controlled foreign exchange market is fueling the problem. Columbus Mavunga reports from Harare.
Zimbabwe's dollar was reintroduced in 2019, but now trades at more than 2,000 to the US dollar on the black market. The government hopes the release of a gold-backed digital currency will reduce the Zimbabwe dollar's rapid devaluation.
It's a very positive thing, as these digital coins, of course, are backed by physical gold in our vaults. So it's a very solid instrument, and so anyone buying it should feel comfortable that it's a solid instrument that will preserve value.
Companies buying the new digital currency hope it can protect their local currency investments.
We do have quite a sizable amount of local currency investments, especially money market and the like. And we, upon analyzing the proposal from the Reserve Bank, we quickly realized that it's a very useful hedging instrument. because it's linked to a hard asset, which is gold. It will protect you in terms of any currency, potential currency devaluation.
But in written comments to VOA, the International Monetary Fund's office in Zimbabwe expressed concern about the digital currency and market controls. It said a careful assessment was needed to ensure the benefits of the new currency outweigh the costs and the potential risks. Economists say having enough gold to back the tokens is a concern.
On paper, I'm saying that a digital gold currency is actually a sound idea economically, but I think there is need for greater transparency in terms of issues like the reserves, how much reserves we actually have as a country to be able to successfully back and defend these digital gold coins.
Zimbabwe state media in April reported the government had about $23 million in gold and planned to build its reserves to $100 million. Last year, Zimbabwe introduced a physical gold coin to try to stabilize its dollar, but the currency has since dropped to less than a third its value. Analysts say a big problem is Zimbabwe's controls on the currency market, which values the local dollar at more than 6 times the rate it trades for on the black market. Columbus Mavungam for VOA News, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Wrapping up a 3-day summit with allies of the group of 7 leading democracies in Japan, U.S. President Joe Biden sought to reassure Beijing that conflict with the West is avoidable even as the G7 ramps up pressure to push back against China's rising military and economic security threats. White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara traveled with President Biden and has our report.
As G7 leaders conclude their 3-day summit in Hiroshima, Japan, with a denunciation of China's rising military and economic security threats, U.S. President Joe Biden sought to reassure Beijing that the group does not seek conflict. At the same time, he issued a warning for China not to invade Taiwan.
There is clear understanding among most of our allies that, in fact, if China were to act unilaterally, there would be a response.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky made a surprise appearance at the summit, invited by G7 host Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida.
By inviting President Zelensky to Japan, we demonstrated the unwavering solidarity of the G7 with Ukraine, and the G7 reaffirmed the importance of the free and open international order based on the rule of law.
Zelensky met G7 and other invited leaders, including Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who has refused to condemn Russia's invasion. Zelensky thanked the G7 for agreeing to provide U.S.-made F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine and for their decision to train Ukrainian pilots to fly them.
I'm very happy. Thank you very much. Thanks to our partners. It really will help our society, our people, to save houses, families.
In a sign of warming relations between America's 2 closest allies in Asia, on the summit sidelines, Biden met with Kishida and President Yoon Suk-yeol, the leader of South Korea. They discussed North Korea's nuclear threat and China's rising assertiveness, 2 regional threats that have aligned the 3 countries closer.
I hope South Korea and Japan will have stronger cooperation on issues on the global agenda like economic security.
Biden returned to Washington Sunday to deal with negotiations on raising the U.S. debt ceiling to avoid the country going into default. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News, Hiroshima.
Let us know what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, highlights from all of the key weekend games in the Basketball African League. Stay with us.
Kigali, we are here for the BAL Finals. For the best of African basketball. The Sahara and Nile Conference delivered their verdict. The top 8 teams on the continent are chasing the Holy Grail. Who will be the next BAL champion? It's game time.
In other news, the Chinese Foreign Ministry's office announced Monday that Democratic Republic of Congo President Felix Tshisekedi will visit China from May 24th to the 29th. President Tshisekedi is expected to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping to review and sign several key trade deals. More than a dozen people thought to be mostly shepherds have been killed in an attack on Sunday in eastern Burkina Faso, security and local sources told AFP on Monday. The Sahel country continues to struggle with a jihadist insurgency that swept in from neighboring Mali in 2015. And Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari commissioned an oil refinery Monday that's being built as Africa's largest. Built by Africa's richest man, Aliko Dangote, in the commercial hub of Lagos, the refinery with the ability to process 650,000 barrels a day when at full capacity is expected to begin operations in June. Talks to prevent the U.S. from defaulting on its debt are continuing Monday. VOA's Veronica Balderas-Iglesias recaps where Democrats and Republicans currently stand on raising the debt limit.
As he prepared to wrap up his participation in the G7 summit in Hiroshima, U.S. President Joe Biden called on Republicans to abandon, quote, extremist positions to prevent the U.S. defaulting on its debt.
I've done my part. We put forward a proposal that cuts spending by more than $1 trillion. And on top of the nearly $3 trillion in deficit reduction that I previously proposed through the combination of spending cuts and new revenues. Now it's time for the other side to move.
Republicans led by House Speaker Kevin McCarthy vehemently demand sharp spending cuts. U.S. Representative Jody Arrington explained to ABC's This Week why he rejects Biden's budget proposal to increase revenue by rolling back tax breaks for wealthy individuals and corporations.
I think the American people understand that the cost of living crisis that they're suffering with is as a result of spending, not because we have low taxes. The fact is we had record taxes going into COVID, and we had another record tax revenue year in 2021.
Blowing up the economy if they don't get their way is what Republicans are threatening to do, according to Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen, who also appeared on ABC.
If you default, we're talking about depression. We're talking about 18 million people out of work. We're talking about interest rates going up. We're talking about everything getting much more expensive for the American people.
If the debt ceiling isn't raised, hard choices will have to be made, conceded Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on NBC's Meet the Press.
We have to pay interest in principal on outstanding debt. We also have obligations to seniors who count on Social Security, our military that expects pay, contractors who've provided services to the federal government, and some bills have to go unpaid.
As early as June 1st is when Secretary Yellen estimates the U.S. would run out of cash if Republicans and Democrats in Congress are unable to reach a deal. Veronica Balderas-Iglesias, VOA News, Washington.
It's time to recap the Basketball Africa League's exciting weekend action. Here's VOA's Jackson Vungani.
Stade Malien was in the lead of South Africa's Cape Town Tigers on Saturday, starting from the first quarter, when Musongela's shot gets blocked and Mali's Diarra heads down the court for a nice dunk. Stade Malien leading by 20 in the third when they continue to make plays when Diarra drops it in once again. Under a minute left and trailing by 5, Cape Town's Binije passes to Prince Lou, who gets it back to Binije for a much-needed 3, making it a 2-point game. But Stade Malien is up by 7 with under 20 seconds left when Amayo gets it to Diarra, who extends his team's lead. Prinsloo tries one last shot, but Stade Malien comes up on top, winning 78-69 and heading to the semi-finals. Egypt's El Ali went up against host team Rwanda's Reg for a second matchup of the day with a big dunk from Manga early in the game. Rwanda's Thomas Jr. Tunshobozwa byose n'umukiza for a long three to get Egypt's lead in the single digits. But Egypt is up by 14 in the last quarter when Thompson gets the ball to Fuade for a three to extend their lead. Down by 22 with about 4 minutes left in the game, Rwanda's Thomas Jr. finds Filer for a three. El Ali's domination over Reg, 94-77, allows Egypt to move on to the semi-finals. Sunday began with Senegal's AS Douane taking on Mozambique's Ferroviario de Beira in a close first half, with Boise to fall for a mid-range two to put Senegal up by 1. Douane up by 6 in the second quarter when Boise makes a three and gets fouled for a chance for a 4-point play. The second half domination by Senegal continues when Perry tries to pass the ball, but a steal by AS Douanes allows Fall to drop in right in. It was all over for Mozambique, with Senegal coming out victorious in a 93-73 win to qualify for the next round.
Just produce tricky moves for their opponents.
ABC fighters of Ivory Coast and Angola's Petro de Luanda went head-to-head for the last game of the weekend, with Petro up by 11 in the second quarter when the ball goes from ABC's Abada to Fofana to Ongwaye to Drame for a nice dunk. Ivory Coast up by 1 with about a minute to go. Dandawo to Moraes, who makes a three to put Petro up by 2. Tied at 84 with 30 seconds left in the game, Angola's Goncalves finds Pedro, who is wide open and gets a 2. Less than 5 minutes left and Ongwaye tries for a 3 but misses, and Angola advances to the semi-finals with an 88-84 victory.
Now for more on the Basketball Africa League, let's go live to Kigali, Rwanda, where VOA Sports reporter Chek Tiero is standing by. Hello, Chek. Tell us, what's the impressive team so far?
Hello, Esther. In this point of play in Kigali, Rwanda right now, Kigali Arena, we're in front of Kigali Arena. You can see behind me all the amazing things happening in this stadium right here. The amazing teams that all these 4 teams that play, 8 teams that played 2 games the past weekend was tremendous, Esther. This is the most competitive weekend we ever seen. The Basketball Africa League, it was some very impressive team, and it's balanced out because it's the team from the Sahara Conference and the team from the Nile Conference face each other, and there's a victory from both sides, and it's a balanced team, it's a balanced conference, as we see. We all see what happened to Stade Malien, who surprising everybody, keep surprising teams to go find themselves in the semi-final. On Wednesday, we also seen AS Douane also separated themselves from Cape Town Tiger of South Africa, and after that we see the Rwanda team lost in the hometown in the front of President Kagame, which was really sad moment because they expected them to overcome this stage that they was on since last year, but it was not happening. But Esther, the best game that happened that really caught everybody's attention was the Petro Rwanda and APC game, and when the game was everybody was on their toes from the beginning to the end. Those are the highlights for the first 2 games that happened, Esther, over the weekend. We will see that we already know who's gonna face who in the semi-final. And but overall, Petro Rwanda really showed a big performance, and we saw a lot of big performance between the coaches and Coach Liz Mills and Coach Pedro of Petro Rwanda. And it was Coach Jose of Petro de Luanda from Angola team. It was a head-to-head game, and the weekend was like that.
Hey, Chek, I know there's a lot of preparations going on right now. When are the finals expected, and who is playing who?
The semi-final is on Wednesday, Esther. AS Douane from Senegal will face off. AS Senegal from the Douane will face off Al Ahly of Egypt, and then Petro Rwanda will face off Stade Malien. Stade Malien will face off Al Ahly. And then AS Douane will face off Petro de Luanda in the semi-final. The winner of those 2 will face each other off in the final. But we see that, Esther, that this year has been a lot of surprising. And we had a big performance from Coach Liz Mills, the only woman coach. And yesterday was a head-to-head game. And until the 8th second of the game, nobody didn't really know who's going to win the game. And he ended up winning. Pedro ended up winning the game because of some, as our commentator was saying, that in this kind of game, everything counts, But Coach Mills, after his press conference, she's happy and she's proud of what she did. And she says she hoped that she make the people feel this like a final of the Basketball Africa League. And she's very proud of the players that came to support her here. And she also mentioned Africa don't need to go look for players anywhere outside of the continent, because she have an example of having all team players from Africa. And that's very something everybody admire, Esther. And the winner of those two going to face each other off on the 26th for the final of the Basketball Africa League 2023 season for the championship.
Check. Thanks so much, and good luck to her. VOA Sports reporter Check Tiero reporting live for us from Kigali, Rwanda. And that's our show for us today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thank you.
First, far too many governments continue to freely target faith community members within their borders. Russia, a country of particular concern for the second year in a row, continues to target faith communities within its borders and beyond. The People's Republic of China seized, imprisoned, and banished predominantly Muslim Uyghurs to re-education camps. In Afghanistan, members of communities that do not toe the Taliban's narrow theological line must hide their religious identity or flee for their lives. A second theme and trend the report highlights is the increase of government restrictions on access to holy sites and places of worship. We have all seen the sad pictures of Ukraine's civilians sifting through the rubble of their beautiful and historic churches, destroyed by Russia's brutal war of aggression. Uyghurs have witnessed the PRC government destroy or repurpose their mosques or cemeteries. Third, many countries continue to legislate and enforce apostasy, blasphemy, and anti-conversion laws and related policies. These laws are direct attacks on the right to freedom of religion or belief. Fourth, the report shines a light on the need for governments to ensure equal access to primary services for all. Religion can be such a powerful force for good in the world. We vow to redouble our efforts to ensure greater respect for freedom of religion or belief for everyone, everywhere.